Social Security numbers appears to be from before 2020. AT&T says they currently have no evidence of unauthorized access to its systems. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Every day, a child in poverty waits for a sponsor is another day of hopelessness. There are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Just text the word radio to 83393.
Is this the title?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC is one game away from going to the Final Four in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. They haven't been there since 1986. Juju Watkins and the Trojans meet up with UConn tonight in the Portland Regional Final. The winner goes to Cleveland for the Final Four. 6 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. Before USC and UConn, the game of the year in women's basketball jumps off in the Albany Regional Final in New York. LSU and Iowa, a rematch of last year's national championship game and a showdown between the game's top two stars, LSU's Angel Reese and Iowa's Caitlin Clark. 4 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. LeBron had a career-high 9 three-pointers in the Lakers win in Brooklyn. LeBron finished with 40 points. The Clippers got 41 from Paul George to help get a win at Charlotte. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what politics is supposed to produce.
This election year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the place for politics. Unapologetically progressive politics. And we've got two of the best and brightest to help you cut through all the noise. Weekdays at 1 p.m., it's A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nee Cordelai-Corte. And at 4 p.m., it's Areva Martin in Real Time. He's the university professor and distinguished member of the White House Correspondents Association. She's a best-selling author and Harvard-trained civil rights lawyer. And they are both here every day to help guide you through all the this year, because you know it's going to get deep. Get your politics on weekday afternoons at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. with A More Perfect Union, hosted by Dr. Nee Cordelai-Corte and Areva Martin in Real Time, only on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
I'm Tavis, Smiley, and pleased to have you hanging out with us today for this program, all 3 hours of it, and especially in this hour. Before I jump into this hour, let me just say that I say all the time that when I leave this studio every day, I leave smarter than when I came in. And every now and then, I just get I get chills, I get goosebumps when I think about the blessing that I have every day of being able to talk to people who are much smarter than I am. And today's been one of those days. I have just been, I think when I leave the studio today, I'm just going to levitate out of here. I ain't even going to walk. I'm just going to float. I'm going to levitate out of here because it means something to me, and I hope for you, to be exposed to black brilliance, to black excellence. And I've just loved both of these conversations today in our first 2 hours. Mark Riley was amazing in that first hour. And what can you say about Chuck D? I mean, all these years later, that Negro still just dropping bars, and everything that Chuck says makes me think. When I think about Chuck, I think about KRS-One, and I've had the honor once was I in Paris? Or I think I was in Paris. But at one point, I had a chance to sit in a room with Chuck D and KRS-One. And when I tell you my head was spinning, sitting between them two brothers is quite a thing. So a chance to talk to either one of them, much less the two of them together, it's a thing that you will never, an experience you will never forget. But I thank Mark and I thank Chuck for those first 2 hours. Just amazing, amazing conversations. And speaking of learning from brilliant black people, this hour is no different. I am delighted to be joined by Boston Globe opinion columnist and associate editor Renée Graham to talk about all the stuff that Renée Graham writes about, and she writes about a little bit of everything. Renée, good to have you on this program. How are you today?
I'm good, Tavis. How are you?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing well, and I'm delighted to be in dialogue with you. Let me just start with this, because it kind of, I think this hour, the first 2 hours sort of give us a nice flow into this final hour with you. And in a variety of ways, we've been talking over these last couple of hours with two great guests about our role and responsibility in the world as Black people. Our role and our responsibility. That's taken on a variety of forms, of course, over the last 2 hours in terms of questions and answers. But when you are an African American columnist and you have the platform that you have in the Boston Globe, tell me about your role and your responsibility, more expressly how you see it with the stuff you write about.
You know, it's interesting. There's nothing I can't write about. My editors give me a lot of freedom to write what I want, how I want. And, you know, that allows me to delve into a lot of different topics. You know, I feel with the platform I have, we're in such a perilous moment that I don't want to take this moment for granted. I don't want to waste having the space that I have, you know, several times a week. I mean, on average, I write about 3,000 words a week. And I want to make every single one of them count. So, you know, whether I'm writing about politics, whether I'm writing about pop culture, I want to make sure that I'm sharing something that matters with people. And, you know, whether they agree with me or not, and believe me, a lot of them do not, but for me, if they're writing to me and they're complaining, it still means that they're reading, which means they actually might be learning something.
You said a lot there that I want to unpack. Let me start with this. When you say that we are living in a perilous moment, I don't suspect that most listening to you right now would disagree with that. But when Renée Graham calls it a perilous moment in American history, by that you mean exactly what?
Well, I mean, look, I've been calling it a perilous moment for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know how to compare this necessarily to what it was like during the Civil War or what it was like, you know, with Pearl Harbor. But I could speak within my lifetime of what is happening in this country, of my conscious lifetime, because I was too young to really remember the civil rights movement. But my conscious lifetime of there has never been a more profound threat to democracy, which was already deeply flawed, don't get me wrong, than there is right now. And, you know, I can remember in the weeks leading up to January 6th, I kept saying around the house, there's going to be a problem, it's going to be bad, it's going to be bad. And everyone's like, no, it's not going to be a big thing. And, of course, we know what happened on January 6th. And on that day, it's in the column I wrote on January 6th, I call it a white supremacist insurrection. And I think the mistake people made is thinking that when people walked away from the Capitol that day, that it ended. No, it is not a failed insurrection. It is an ongoing coup. That's exactly what we're seeing. So when I speak about the peril of this moment, that's what I'm talking about.
Do you see it getting better before it gets? Do you see it getting worse before it gets better?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's going to get worse because I don't know that everyone, and I include the media in a lot of this, if they grasp what this is, I don't know that the media, and I speak very broadly about that because I don't mean absolutely everyone in the media, I mean that in a very general way, but I don't think they grasp the gravity of this moment, and you can kind of see in their coverage. You know, they still act, you know, I don't want to, you know, pick on Jonathan Karl, who works for ABC. I don't know Jonathan Karl, I don't want to pick on him, but, you know, he wrote a book and he talked about the circus. This is not a circus. This is not a show. This is not fun. You know, lives are at stake. Rights are at stake. And so I think the thing for a lot of people is, you know, we've always had this system of democracy, and it's gone through a lot, and it's still here. So I think there's a sense that it can't happen. Like, it can't fall apart. We can't become an authoritarian state. And this is a terrible example to use, but, you know, years and years ago, I used to work overnights, and I would complain and say, why do I have to work overnight? And they would always say, you know, in case a plane hits the Prudential Building, which at the time was, you know, one of the tallest buildings in Boston, they used to say that because that was the worst thing that could happen. No one thought a plane could hit a skyscraper. And then we got to, you know, September 11th. So the idea that the worst can't happen is absurd. You're dreaming. You know, I just want people to understand that everything we're seeing is part of a continuum. It's organized. It's well-funded. And, you know, there's a lot at stake. And if we aren't paying attention, we're pretty much going to lose everything we have.
It's going to be another great hour, I can tell already. When we come forward, I want to probe this notion of the this notion that it can't happen here. There are many that believe that we're still preaching this gospel of American exceptionalism, as if history doesn't record that every empire in the history of the world at some point has a reckoning. We'll talk about the fact that it can't happen here. There's a report out called the World Happiness Report. Americans have slipped from the top 20. Who is the culprit that has led to such unhappiness in our country? A great deal more to talk about with Renée Graham of the Boston Globe when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit on the go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that your digestive system isn't working at its best? Taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil fiber powders help promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. The gelling action of this special fiber traps and removes waste so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Metamucil, promoting digestive health for a better you. Learn more at metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Attorney Joe Cordell.
Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims on their business or practice itself. Clients with assets depend on their divorce lawyer's skills in these matters, and that's why it's so important to hire someone that has those skills.
1455 Frazee Road, Suite 1050, San Diego, California, 92108. CordellCordell.com.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Renée Graham, opinion columnist for the Boston Globe, coming your way right about now. Renee's already said a few things that I want to spend the rest of the hour unpacking as we move through this conversation. Renée, I was thinking of a few things over that break, and one of them is this notion that you were advancing or unpacking earlier, that so many Americans believe that what they see around the world, what they see happening around the world could never happen here. We felt that way before 9/11, and I would like to think that we have sort of rethought that, and yet the evidence that I see every day suggests to me that we still haven't come to terms with how fragile our democracy is. We still haven't come to terms with where we are on the precipice. We haven't come to terms with history, which records again that every empire in the history of the world at some point has a reckoning. If I'm right about that, why am I right about that?
Well, you are right. I mean, we've always looked at other countries. We've seen governments overthrown, and we've seen authoritarianism take hold. We've seen fascism. And there's always a sense that somehow our sense of democracy, if not democracy itself, will save us. And so, we're having more debates about this now, but there are still places where people feel like we're going to be fine. We're going to be okay. Democracy has survived 250-odd years. It'll be great. And that just isn't true. There are too many countries. We've watched this happen in places where things were much better, right? And suddenly here we are. We're now one of those countries. I remember years ago watching MTV, and it was a Van Halen video, and it was just putting up different place cards about different things, and one of them was, right now, your country is doing things that you think happen only in other countries. That's the moment we're in now. Where we're looking at this and we're seeing, Brazil, and we can't look away in the same kind of sense and say, well, that's third world country over there, that's a banana republic, and that's what happened. That's what's happening here. So there was always a bit of, obviously, racism in the idea that, those black and brown people, they don't know how to govern, they don't understand how things go. Well, look at where we are now, where we're under, the distinct possibility that someone facing 91 felony charges, or well, almost 90 now felony charges, can possibly be the next president of the United States.
Yeah.
There's no reason for anyone to think that democracy is safe. If you do not tend to democracy at all times, it will wither and die, and that's the path we're on right now.
What are some of the things on your list, some of the sources of the fragility of our democracy? I hear you talking about Donald Trump, and we'll get to that. But are there other things on your list that you think have led to our democracy being so fragile in this present moment?
I think one of the first things, you have to go back a decade to Shelby v. Holder, the Supreme Court, gutting the Voting Rights Act. I don't know if up to that point most people were aware that that could happen. The idea that, this was 1965, you have this right, and it's sacrosanct and nothing can happen to it. And when the Supreme Court essentially came in and said, when John Roberts said, well, you know what, I think racism is kind of over. We really don't need that anymore. It changed everything. The ways that a lot of states, the states that were being most closely watched, immediately zoomed in and tried to have all these different voting laws suddenly that didn't exist before and were never necessary. That was the first real moment. And I don't really think it hit people until probably 2016, which was the first presidential election after that Supreme Court decision, and certainly in 2020 that, oh, wow, there's something happening in the way people vote, and we know that that's happening. That's the first moment. And if voting is the foundation of our democracy. If that's under threat, everything else goes with it.
Yeah.
And so, I think that should have been a wake-up call for a lot of people. But as I said, I think people are just in such deep states of denial, especially if they're not in a state where it's happening. I live in Massachusetts. I'm not worried about somebody asking me for my ID when I vote. It's illegal to do so. But there are lots of people who do live in those states, and then they have ID, or they're getting purged from voter rolls. All these things are constantly happening, and I feel like nobody's watching.
Yeah. I want to go back to your comment earlier, Renee, about the perilous moment that we are in. For you, that perilous moment has been ongoing for about 8 years now. But I don't want to color the question much more than this. I think you'll take my point. As a columnist who's writing about all kinds of issues every day, what's your sense of the condition of truth in our country? The condition of truth. What's your sense of the state of truth in this democracy?
Oh, I mean, it's eroding. I don't know that there aren't really absolute truths anymore in the way that we once had them. And, I get emails all the time. I might mention something about saying Donald Trump being racist, and people will say, prove to me he's racist. Show me one thing he's ever said that's racist. And it's like, well, how much time in a day? Like, you're literally sitting at a computer. You can Google this yourself and find out. But that's kind of where we are. It's just everything. It's like, another one of those moments that really was shattering was the aftermath of January 6th, when you still had 147 Republicans refuse to certify the election. Like, that should have been the moment when everybody said, okay, we all saw what happened. We were running for our lives. We have to sit here and just say this was nonsense. They didn't do it. That the election denialism is still going on. A majority of Republicans still believe that was stolen. that the 2020 election was stolen. That's the state of truth in America. That they have not a shred of evidence to the contrary, but they somehow believe that Joe Biden was not legitimately elected. That's the state of truth.
I was sort of chuckling earlier, Renee, when you said that you get a lot of mail from folk who don't agree with you when you write your columns in the Boston Globe, and I know what that feels like. I've gotten a bunch of mail over the course of my career when people didn't agree with me, and that's okay. I tell folk all the time, I recognize, you should know that I do not have a monopoly on the truth. Furthermore, you should recognize that I understand that there is the truth and there is the way to the truth, and you got to be humble enough to understand, as I try to be, that I don't have a monopoly on all the truth, and you got to be gracious enough to accept that fact that some people just ain't found their way yet to the truth that you know. And so that doesn't mean that we're not obligated to share what we see, to tell the truths that we know, but other folk just haven't arrived there yet. We don't all wake up at the same time, literally or figuratively. We don't wake up at the same time. I get that. And yet sometimes you see stuff that people send you where they disagree with you, but it's not rooted in any reality. The disagreement, the difference, their point of view is not rooted in any sort of reality. And I'm seeing more and more of that these days. It's making me question the mental state of our demos. That's me. What say you?
I mean, I agree. I mean, it's very hard to argue with people who simply have no capacity to see the truth.
Mm-hmm.
What they're interested in is what confirms their personal narrative, what confirms their personal bias. And anything that falls outside of that circle, they're not interested in. So, they will sit back and they'll tick this off and, Donald Trump accomplished this and he did this. And I'm like, yeah, actually that was Obama who did that. No, it wasn't. It's like you can look it up, but it doesn't matter. Like, if you can say to someone, look it up, and they look, oh my God, you're right, I was wrong. They're never going to admit that they were wrong because they need to believe this. They need to believe this was true. The same way that they needed to believe that, January 6th was just a riot that got out of hand or a parade that got out of hand and people got over, they need to believe this because it justifies, like, it's their identity at this point. I mean, it's not just the politics. It's literally their flesh and blood. It's who they are.
Yeah.
And who they are is that lie. And if you push against that lie, in their minds, you're almost threatening their lives. Sort of literally, but figuratively as well. But, they're just threatening the core of who they are and how they see their place in the world. And they have no capacity for that, so all they could do is cling to the lie.
It is not as if after this election in November, the country is going to make a U-turn. And so I guess my question is, what gives? We're having this conversation today, but by your own admission, things are going to get worse before, if they ever get better. What happens to the future of this democracy if this is as good as it gets?
Then if this is as good as it gets, if each day is worse than the day before,
Mm-hmm.
then democracy falls, then fails.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really all there is to it. I don't see any other scenario because, there is a presidential candidate who is not interested in saving democracy. And his entire emphasis is on tearing democracy down and dismantling it. So, if the election goes a certain way, and look, I don't necessarily think that if Joe Biden wins in November, that democracy is now saved. It's not going to stop. People are going to continue to threaten it. The Supreme Court is still going to be the same Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. So people are continually going to continue to threaten democracy as we know it. The tragedy of that is we've never really fully grasped and embraced democracy in this country. There were always people who were kept outside of it. Even after 1965, even after the Civil Rights Act in 64, there were always people who were kept outside of it. And so if there was this idea that we were at least marching forward, but slowly, now we're retracting. Now we're sliding further and further back from the incomplete place we already were. So yeah. I don't see how democracy holds, certainly if one candidate wins, but I don't think democracy is necessarily saved if the other one does.
And see, that's my dilemma. It's the conversation that nobody really wants to have. But if you assume that things are only going to get worse, that people are going to be more entrenched, that people are going to be clinging more with a greater grip to their alternative facts, that we do not have objective truths anymore, that people are in their silos now more than ever, that people are becoming more nativist now more than ever. If you assume that all of that is true, and it is in real time, and you assume that all of that gets worse, then to your point, we are headed inexorably toward a moment that cannot be stopped. And that moment is that the democracy, or the experiment in democracy, just falls flat. It collapses. I always refer to it as an experiment in democracy. This audience knows that. We have a Madisonian framework for democracy, but you and I agree, we've never quite really honored that. And so I call us an experiment in democracy. But here we are trying to export this thing called democracy around the globe. And unless you see something I don't see, unless you know something I don't know, I think we are hurtling toward a moment where the democracy ultimately just fails. It falls flat unless something arrests that development. And I don't see what that something is, Renee.
I think that's exactly it, Tavis. I don't see what that something is either. You know, I've said for a long time that if this had been a healthy democracy to begin with, Donald Trump could never have become president because people would have rejected it. People would have said, this is not the direction this country needs to go in. If this had been a healthy democracy, there would have been an absolute truth about what happened on January 6th. We didn't get that. You know, people would have, there would have been a concession speech in 2020. There would have been an idea like, hey, this guy lost, this guy won, and now we move on to the next administration. That didn't happen. That just didn't happen. And so, I don't see how democracy survives this moment. There isn't, I don't, I think it was probably about 8 years ago now, people in South Korea wanted the president gone. There had been a lot of problems, a lot of corruption. And they were out in the streets day after day, week after week. And they even arranged it around their work schedules. So they would do it on the weekends. So there would be hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of Seoul and other parts of South Korea to get her out of office. And they're like, we're not going to go home until she's gone. And eventually she was. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's this weird sense that people are kind of, walking along and everything feels normal, but it's not normal. We haven't been normal in a really long time. And so I think that, again, as I originally said, I think people just don't think that thing can happen. It's, to use another bad example is, in Boston we have Patriots Day, and the Boston Marathon is always on Patriots Day, and we have to work. That's a day off for everyone else. It's never a day off for us. And the reason always being that if something bad happened at the marathon, and the comment used to be, in case someone blows up a bomb at the marathon, we need to have people on staff. But of course we thought, again, that would never happen. Yeah. And then 2013 happened.
It happened, yeah. Yeah.
So there's always a sense the worst can't happen until it does.
And I take your point. And moreover, if the abnormal in this country, this abnormal state that we are in, is in fact the new normal, then we're going down a rabbit hole. Unless something happens. And again, at least as Renee is concerned, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see what that something is. What I do know is that Renee is writing about race and racism and police violence and gun reform and politics and so much more to the tune of about 3,000 words a week, as she mentioned. And there have been a couple of pieces of late that she's put her pen to, or her typewriter to. I'm not sure how she writes. But I want to interrogate a couple of those. I mentioned a moment ago this World Happiness Report that is out, and Americans have slipped from the top 20. What is the culprit of our unhappiness in this country? Renée Graham has the answer. She'll tell us that and a great deal more when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Congress could vote to give Ukraine additional aid in its war with Russia when lawmakers return from recess next week. During an interview on Fox News' Sunday Night in America, House Speaker Mike Johnson said he expects to move an aid package for Ukraine with some important innovations. Johnson has yet to spell out exactly what the package would look like or if he would put the supplemental that passed the Senate last week for a vote. Lizzo may be taking a big step back from the spotlight. On Friday, the African-American singer made a post on social media saying she's tired of putting up with lies and bullying online. She wrote, "All I want is to make music and make people happy, but I'm starting to feel like the world doesn't want me in it." She ended her message saying, "I didn't sign up for this, I quit." And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Every day, a child in poverty waits for a sponsor is another day of hopelessness. There are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Just text the word radio to 83393.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC is one game away from going to the Final Four in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. They haven't been there since 1986. Juju Watkins and the Trojans meet up with UConn tonight in the Portland Regional Final. The winner goes to Cleveland for the Final Four. 6 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. Before USC and UConn, the game of the year in women's basketball jumps off in the Albany Regional Final in New York. LSU and Iowa, a rematch of last year's national championship game and a showdown between the game's top two stars, LSU's Angel Reese and Iowa's Caitlin Clark. 4 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. LeBron had a career-high 9 3-pointers in the Lakers win at Brooklyn. LeBron finished with 40 points. The Clippers got 41 from Paul George to help get a win at Charlotte. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Around here, we don't believe in victimhood. We believe in raising our voices, amplifying black voices in the climate conversation. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
Every day, a child in poverty waits for a sponsor is another day of hopelessness. There are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Just text the word radio to 83393.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over. And if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So, no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
Do you have both Medi-Cal and Medicare?
If so, the new LA Care plan called Medicare Plus can help you get the most out of your health plan for $0.
LA Care provides personalized service to Angelinos like us.
Plus, it gives us access to doctors and specialists across Los Angeles County.
For zero cost, we get access to full benefits.
From vision coverage,
in-home support services,
to prescription drug coverage,
and a quarterly over-the-counter allowance.
plus personal equipment.
Meal programs,
a gym membership,
And so much more.
For more than 25 years,
LA Care has provided Angelinos with access to quality health care at an affordable cost.
For our families,
our seniors,
our community,
it's a plus.
It's a plus
for all of us.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis, Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
It does indeed with Boston Globe opinion columnist and associate editor Renée Graham, who I am enjoying talking to in this hour. So, Renée, there are a couple of things you've written about of late that I want to jump into right quick. I think I want to do this first. We were talking about the state of our democracy and the fragility of it, and Donald Trump and all the like. I was fascinated by your piece that Trump keeps boasting and bragging and acting like he's anxious to debate Joe Biden because he wants to get him, I think, in the spotlight where he can sort of embarrass him around this issue of his mental acuity. But you don't buy the argument that Trump really wants to debate Joe Biden that bad, do you?
I don't. I mean, look, Donald Trump had a bunch of debates he could have been in during the primary season. You know, he had 5 debates. Every single one of them he turned down. So why now is Donald Trump so eager to get on the debate stage? I don't buy it.
Mm-hmm. Let me play devil's advocate. He didn't want to debate those Republicans, one, because there's no real reason to do so if there was no evidence that suggests that any of them had a chance to even touch you. Why put yourself out there if none of them can come close to you? And as it turned out, nobody came close to him. So why waste your time debating with folk that aren't worthy of being debated with when you're the front runner by so far they can't lay a glove on you? That won't be the case with Joe Biden, number one. And number two, the argument that I made a moment ago that perhaps he can, get Joe Biden to make a gaffe on national television and just seize the moment.
You know, I always think there's this idea with Trump where what he wants to do is control the narrative. He wants to control the setting. Mm-hmm. He can't do that in a debate. And so it's very interesting that not only did he not show up for the debates with his Republican opponents, but he always held some sort of counter event where he could sort of wail on and on for 2 hours, or he'd be on Fox News where he'd have softball questions thrown at him. He wants to be able to control that, and he can't do that on a debate stage. If his whole idea of getting on a debate stage is, I'm going to make Joe Biden look like he's mentally incompetent, well, A, Trump might show more people that he might be mentally incompetent, but also he's going to have to answer for a lot of things. The rhetoric he's had lately, his stance on abortion, which has been kind of all over the place because he doesn't really want to commit to a national abortion ban. All of these sorts of things are going to add up. And he can't just go into some rant about something else the way he does. You know, what Donald Trump wants, he likes a monologue. He doesn't like a dialogue. Mm-hmm. So, I don't really know that. I don't believe that he really wants to be a debate stage. And look, it's going to come up, I'm sure. Sure. So we will see. But, he was talking about that a few weeks ago. He's not saying anything about it lately.
Yeah. One of the things I've been thinking about, and I think you'll appreciate this being a writer and a journalist yourself, I've had any number of occasions over the course of my broadcast career where I have been granted exclusives or interviews with certain people, and they agreed to sit with me, Renée, but only if their attorney were in the room, only if their attorney was nearby. And the reason for that was because, obviously, there were certain things their attorney did not want them to say, certain areas of inquiry that they would not allow their client to go into, even as they agreed to give me the exclusive conversation with said person. I've had a number of these occasions over the course of my career. I raise that because it's going to be awfully difficult to see Donald Trump and Joe Biden engage in debates where you know there are going to be questions about his legal situation or situations, plural. These are going to come up. And I don't know, again, everything about this Trump candidacy is unprecedented. This moment is unprecedented. As you say, it's a perilous moment. It has been for 8 years or more. But I'm trying to wrap my brain around how we do debates where they're going to be questioned about his legal situation, but your attorney can't sit next to you on stage and tell you can't answer that question. They're not going to tell the moderator he can't answer that question. That's going to be a hot mess, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. Look, if I'm his attorney, I'd be sweating bullets through that because Donald Trump is not going to be capable of controlling himself. He lost a case for defaming E. Jean Carroll. He still can't shut up about E. Jean Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all the evidence anyone needs. He's got all of these court cases that at some point he's going to say something about the judge, the lawyers, about the case itself, and that's going to blow the whole thing open. So, again, if I'm his lawyers, you know what I think this is? It's like every time Donald Trump has been in court, they always say, he absolutely wants to testify. He wants to testify. He never does.
Mm-hmm.
It's all empty flexing. And that's what I think this is. I think it comes from that same exact place where it's like, yeah, I can take them on. I want to do this. But then push comes to shove, he doesn't actually do it.
Yeah. Over the course of my career, I've interviewed people and talked to them and had lunch and dinner with a lot of people. Lunches and dinners who are on the Presidential Debate Commission. I've known some of them personally over the years. And I've been really thinking about this because I don't know how they're going to handicap this in a way that is fair to Joe Biden, but in a way that Trump's lawyers also can agree with that won't get him into trouble. And it may very well come down to the fact that there can be no questions asked about his legal situation. But I don't think the American people are going to go for that. You can't be in a debate running for president with all these cases going on, and then we're supposed to accept the fact that for legal reasons you can't answer questions about these. I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, I digress on it for now, but I'm already thinking ahead of September when we get to that sprint between Labor Day and Election Day where these debates typically happen, usually 2 or 3 of them. We'll see. But I think it's going to be some tricky terrain for the Presidential Debate Commission and for the moderators and certainly for Mr. Trump himself to try to navigate those treacherous waters without getting himself in a great deal more trouble. We shall see. I assume, though, and I'll let you respond. I assume, Renee, that he won't have the success. I mean, your argument is that he doesn't really want to debate Biden that badly anyway. But my assumption is that just because he got away with not debating these Republican candidates, that he won't get away with that. Not that he suggested. I've read nothing where he said he doesn't want to debate Joe Biden. But my sense is those debates are going to happen whether he wants them to happen or not.
Right, but I also think what's going to happen is he's going to agree to a debate, and then at some point he's going to drop out because he'll say there was some rule or regulation they tried to spring on him at the last moment, and that was unfair, and it was just very unfair to him, and he's going to do the same thing he always does. He's going to, again, it's going to be an empty flex. I wanted to do this, but they tried to pull a fast one at the end, so I'm not doing it now because now we don't play like that. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
I do not think, again, he wants to be on that debate stage because the problem is it's not just going to be him and Joe Biden.
Yeah.
It's going to be him, Joe Biden, and a panel of moderators.
Yeah.
He can't predict what those questions are going to be.
No, I can hear him now. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. I love how he grabs 2 or 3 words. He just rides with it. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. I'm out. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Her name is Renée Graham. I am Tavis Smiley. I'm glad to have you tuned in. When we come forward, straight to this conversation about why Americans are so unhappy. Not just so unhappy, but according to the World Happiness Report, we are unhappier than we have ever been. And Renée Graham thinks she knows why. She's written about it, but she'll talk about it when we come forward.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam, from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
I have diabetes. I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
I have asthma. I'm at risk too.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and the Boston Globe opinion columnist and associate editor, Renée Graham. So, Renée, the World Happiness Report tells us that Americans have slipped from the top 20, that we are not just unhappy, but we are unhappier than ever. And the culprit for that, to your mind, is what?
Well, the culprit, there's a lot of culprits, but, America's never been in the top 10 of the happiest countries. We've always sort of bounced around the bottom 10 of the top 20. But we landed at 23 this year. And the reason they said primarily is because of the unhappiness of young people. And, it's out of 143 countries, Americans under 30 ranked number 62 compared to baby boomers who ranked at 10. So what is making young people so unhappy? And the report, which is done by the UN and Columbia University and Gallup and other institutions and organizations, came up with the term the inequality of well-being. And what it essentially says, if you do not have the things that are crucial for your well-being, like a steady income, education, healthcare, housing, social acceptance, a supportive social environments, family, community, all of these things, if you don't have those things, they weigh down, they impact your happiness. And people who live in countries who have those things, who aren't worried about how they're going to pay their bills if they get sick, or don't have the money to afford even basic housing, remarkably, they're a lot happier than we are.
And yet, and I'm not naive in saying this, of course, and yet we are the richest nation in the history of the world. How can a nation that is so wealthy have people who are so unhappy?
Well, we're the richest nation in the world with probably the worst gap in income and wealth. So there are lots of wealthy people in America, but we know what the other side looks like, and it keeps that gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can't feel happy if you are in a constant state of panic about the most basic things like keeping a roof over your head or food over your table. On your table, this isn't just, inflation's high and it costs a lot to put gas in my car. This is something much more fundamental. And, something that the report said is that, and I'm quoting here, well-being and happiness are critical indicators of a nation's economic and social development, which should be a key aim of policy. That's the whole thing right there. The policies that governments make should be benefiting people's well-being instead of putting them on a much uneven footing or threatening their rights. If those are the things, people want action that makes their lives better, and they're not getting enough of that, and young people are really seeing that.
We were talking earlier in this conversation, in case you missed it, you tuned in late, we were talking with Renée Graham of the Boston Globe earlier about the fragility of our democracy. And it seems to me that it's not a far stretch from people being perennially unhappy to feeling a sense of hopelessness. And when hopelessness sets in, you take my point, your democracy is in trouble. Our remaining moments with Renée Graham when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. 120,000 miles of night drives, daily commutes, and who knows how many.
Are we there yet?
Through countless fixes, elbow grease, and a new radiator, you kept your ride alive. With eBay Motors, you have over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Tips to help improve your credit score in 2024. Establishing credit is an important key to achieving financial health, but building a credit history from scratch can feel challenging since you need credit to build credit. First, what does it mean to build credit? All consumers have a score between 300 and 850. You want your score to be as high as possible as lenders look at your credit score to make loan and credit decisions. A good credit score shows you have a track record of borrowing money responsibly. Remember, it's never too late to build or rebuild your credit. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
More of Renée Graham right about now. The last 3 minutes I have on today's program. Renée Graham is a Boston Globe opinion columnist and associate editor. I think I want to wrap this conversation, Renée, kind of where we began, and that is this notion again of our democracy. And you used this phrase about whether or not democracy will hold. Will democracy hold? We were talking about how unhappy so many Americans are, certainly our young people. And I read another survey not too long ago that found that for the first time ever, more Americans believe that our best days are behind us than any prior poll. That more Americans believe our best days are behind us. How does, to your mind, democracy hold if most of our fellow citizens believe that our best days as a nation are already behind us?
That's a tough question. I understand exactly why people feel that way. At the same time, and look, I'm a Mets fan, so optimism is not my default setting.
That's funny.
But,
Okay.
but if people are just going to sit back and sort of like gnash their teeth and wring their hands, then it is going to completely fall.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a way to fight back. We've seen other countries do this. We've seen other countries try to wrest themselves from the grips of authoritarianism and fascism. If we don't do that, we're going to be in the place where we don't want to be. And so I completely understand, and I certainly feel it myself. It's easy to feel defeated. It's easy to feel like there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
There has to be something. Yeah. This country has fought for its democracy before. You talk about something like World War II. The country knows how to do that. This is a very different kind of fight, and there has to be that same kind of effort. But I think it's harder sometimes to fight the enemy within.
Yeah.
It's easy to look across the pond and say, oh, those people are the bad people. But this time, the people are your neighbors and your coworkers, and for some people, in their families. And that's very hard to recognize, which makes it difficult to fight.
Yeah. So I lied. That wasn't my exit question. Here's my exit question. One of what you just said. How do they let a Mets fan work for the Boston Globe?
That's just the way it is. Look, I'm not a Yankee fan. See, that's the key.
Yeah, that's the key. Yeah.
You see, so that's why I'm allowed in the door, because I'm real for the Mets, not the Yankees.
Yeah, I can only imagine if you were a Yankees fan, they wouldn't let you in the door at the Boston Globe. But I digress. Yeah.
It would not be safe.
It would not
be safe.
I take your point. Her name is Renée Graham. Mets fan though she is, she lives in Massachusetts and she works for the Boston Globe, where she's an opinion columnist and an associate editor. And I have immensely enjoyed this conversation with Renée Graham. Renée, good to have you on. We'll do it again. All the best to you.
My absolute pleasure, Tavis. Thank you so much.
A great delight to have you on this program. And just like that, 3 hours gone. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in to Tavis Smiley. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica